Thank you so much. Let me just share my screen. Sorry, if you don't mind, I'll just Okay, so good morning and thank you so much for having me. My name is Thandile Chinyavanhu and I'm a climate and energy campaigner for Greenpeace Africa. And today I'd just like to discuss some creative tactics that we've used in the past for behavior and policy change, and some of the key issues that we'll be focusing on going into the future, mainly being climate action. So yeah, I'll just begin by giving a brief overview of Greenpeace Africa if you're unfamiliar with the organization, and some of the things that you may know us for, as well as some of the tactics. Apologies, I'm in a co-working space, so if you do hear some voices behind me, please forgive me for that. So one of the things I'll be speaking about is just some of the tactics that we've been using in climate action and how we've influenced public policy and behavior. So Greenpeace Africa is an independent environmental campaigning organization. We believe in nonviolent, creative confrontation to expose environmental injustices globally and bring forth solutions that are essential to green and peaceful future. So you may be familiar with some of the work that Greenpeace International has done. If you've seen there's an orangutan video that is quite an emotive piece of campaigning material that has been utilized to campaign on illegal logging, and that's been something that maybe has been quite a useful tool that they've used in the past to bring in volunteers. So if you might not necessarily be familiar with Greenpeace Africa specifically, that's because Greenpeace Africa was started a bit later than Greenpeace International in the 1990s. And we were most familiar with us for our logging campaigning in the Congo Basin. And of course, the office was started in 2008. But yeah, Greenpeace Africa has used a variety of creative tactics in the past to influence behavior and policy, and we'll be just giving you an overview of some of those today. So I've just got on the side some pictures of some actions that we've partaken in for visuals. So one of the key issues when it comes to influencing policy is always going to be being able to put out some useful research and being able to influence the media stream and how they are going about reporting on issues pertaining to environment. So these are some of the research that Greenpeace Africa has put out over the past couple of years. In the past, we have focused extensively on air pollution and how that has affected the health of communities, and just raising awareness about the fact that air quality has an impact not only on issues such as bronchitis and asthma, but most recently it's been revealed that air quality has an impact on mental health as well as eyesight. And so we've been bringing that information to the fore and just highlighting that South Africa in particular is one of the biggest hotspots in Kriel and Mpumalanga, specifically in South Africa, is one of the biggest air pollution hotspots. So this research, if I can just highlight over there, I'm going to be moving from the left to the right, is one of the researchers that was put out with regards to highlighting South Africa's role in air pollution and our major emitters, Eskom and Sasol, being highlighted as being a key source of that. But as we're moving on, we'll be moving further into our strategy. Will be looking further and closer at climate change and how we can influence policy there. And a major part of that is going to be a coal and gas phase out. And so what's been crucial for us is making sure that we are ahead and providing case studies as well as research on what a just transition away from coal may look like. And so the just transition in South Africa remains in its infancy, but it's important that going forward, we support the labor unions and ensure that they are fully capacitated with the information that they need as far as a just transition is concerned. So these two pieces of research are looking at case studies in Germany, major countries that are very codependent, much like South Africa, South Korea as well, and just highlighting what some of the key benefits have been for them in this cold transition and what the best practices would be to ensure an equitable and healthy and socially orientated just transition. Further, this report on the side is just a follow-up to the sulfur dioxide report from 2019, which highlights how although there was a decrease in sulfur dioxide concentrations, specifically in the Mpumalanga region, it is largely attributed to COVID-19 and ultimately the work stoppages there. But South Africa's Green Mpumalanga still remains one of the largest SO2 hotspots in the world. And this report to the right, to the furthest to the right, Weathering the Storm, is the most recent report that we put out, and that is just highlighting some of the key challenges that the African continent can anticipate as we reach that 1.5 degrees Celsius temperature target, and we start to experience a lot more of the extreme weather events that are related to climate change. And so this has been a key report that we will quote to the media and highlight to our policymakers, decision makers, so that they're aware of these are the challenges that we are likely to anticipate if they don't take immediate and drastic action to phase out coal and mitigate further temperature increases. So another key part of the campaigning work that we do, as I mentioned, is influencing public discourse. And that's not always going to be in the form of research, as many people are not going to be enticed to read the entire document. So what's important for us is to distill those components of that research down into bits of information that can be tangible and digestible for most of the public. And so often we will have journalists reach out to us as well for comments, and we'll provide that commentary, or we will be putting out opinion pieces of our own to influence that discourse. So maybe just starting to the left, this is a major issue that has been in South Africa as of late, has been the car power ship debacle. So our Minister of Energy and Energy has been focusing on procuring gas in the form of these power ships on our coasts, and Greenpeace Africa and a number of civil society organizations have been challenging this and just highlighting how this whole process is legitimized capital flight. And in South Africa, we do have a particular challenge with what we refer to as state capture corruption, and just highlighting how this whole process has not necessarily been carried out efficiently or according to due process, and just highlighting that so people will begin to question this whole process and really recognize that it's not for their benefit, but rather for the benefit of the government officials that are responsible for this and their cronies. So going forward as well, some issues that we have been campaigning on heavily in the past as well is plastics, and the recent revelation that our government officials would not be supporting the plastic ban treaty, and just highlighting that to the public, and how plastic imports in China have really been to the detriment of public health, and highlighting how that may be the same as it comes to that China has now refused to accept plastic imports, that South Africa is preparing itself to receive what would have ultimately been imported by China, and just highlighting what the public health concerns might be for us going forward. And further, we're just looking at carbon offset markets. We've given commentary on that, as well as how climate change is affecting women in rural communities. So what's important here is that we just need to make, as I mentioned, it tangible to the readers, something that they can relate to, and how it may affect them in the immediate. Because for the most part, a lot of people engaging on climate change aren't really certain of how it may impact them in the immediate. It always seems to be at this point, affecting our neighbors to a more detriment than it is us. So it's important for us to be able to contextualize for people how climate change may immediately impact you, be it through your immediate livelihood or ultimately through food security. And then to the left, our most recent opinion piece on the COP26 negotiations, which I'll get into a bit further into the discussion about how Greenpeace Africa will be engaging on the COP26 negotiations and what will be of most priority to us as we go into this very crucial moment in climate emergency discussions. So one of the crucial pieces of our work, as I mentioned, is influencing the behavior of people, and as well as influencing public discourse. And of course, it's not always that that the research or opinion pieces will appeal to people. So we need very quick, bite-sized, ways of disseminating information. And one of the ways in which Greenpeace Africa uses this is multimedia. And so this is just one of the multimedia pieces that we've put out specifically around air pollution. I'm not 100% sure on my time if I'm able to show this to you. I would love to, but I do have another video that I would really love you to see down the line. So I maybe can return to this at a later stage, but we'll of course share this PowerPoint with you so that you can have a chance to see the multimedia tools that we use to appeal to people. But yes, I will maybe skip this one and allow you to view it once the slide deck is shared with you. So this is just an image of some of the actions that we have taken. And so, as I mentioned, the stages at which we would usually interact with our public officials and try and engage with them to change policy would be, of course, through research, continuous engagements with them on platforms where we are allowed to, making submissions, such as we did with the South Africa's nationally determined contributions earlier this year, which have ultimately now been submitted ahead of the COP, but we did have a hand in influencing the government on how they should go about those. And ultimately, when all else fails, we do turn to actions, which, if you can look on the right, is our colleagues scaling the Nelson Mandela Bridge to hang banners, which ultimately read "Kill coal, coal kills," and we need a coal phase out as well. This is in the middle here, a picture of our colleagues in Kenya campaigning against the Lamfu coal project that was meant to be started there. And ultimately, of course, that they were successful in ensuring that that project did not go through. And that's been something I'll discuss going forward, as it is featured in our timeline of successes. And of course, here is a picture from right outside of Eskom, which is our state utility, one of our major carbon emitters. And our colleagues staged hospital gurneys with people on them outside to represent that what was featured in that report that I mentioned about the sulfur dioxide pollution and how it's contributed. Specifically, our state utility has contributed to the death of 3,300 people a year. So this has a number of gurneys outside to represent the lives that have been lost as a result of air pollution. And it's actions like this that really draw in the public's attention and are really emotive for people, that really get them to be able to decide, I want to be a part of the movement, and decide to volunteer with us and join the movement against environmental degradation and specifically climate change. So these are just some of the key moments in Greenpeace Africa's history that have allowed for us to influence the dialogue and ultimately lead to changes in policy. So one of those key moments being in 2012, Lamfu coal loses its license to kill. As I mentioned in the picture above, Greenpeace Africa campaigned heavily against the expansion of coal in Africa, which of course, because it's losing its license in the global north, investors are viewing Africa as an emerging market, and one in which is poorly regulated and allows them to continue to sell their polluting coal. 2015, Greenpeace Africa and Greenpeace Southeast Asia released a report on illegal fishing in West Africa by Chinese companies. And this was quite crucial in allowing for Greenpeace Africa to engage with officials in Senegal. And this ultimately led to some great policy changes and directives being issued by the Senegalese Minister of Agriculture. In 2016, Greenpeace Africa campaigned heavily on deforestation in Cameroon, and this was a key moment in deforestation campaign. And we're just seeing now that there is as well some good news that was released on Friday with regards to deforestation and concessions. So that's been a major success for Greenpeace Africa. 2017, we had the Decolonize campaign in Kenya, in which we partnered with 350.org and Save Lamfu, campaigning against this planned coal power station. And ultimately, as I mentioned, starting in 2012, and ultimately that led to a success in that Stanbic Bank withdrew its funding from this project. And ultimately in 2019, Kenya's National Environmental Tribunal cancelled this license. So in 2017 as well, Greenpeace Africa crowdfunded over 100,000 Rand to install solar panel lights in Diepsloot. And this is also one of these major creative tactics that was used to really allow for a sector of the population that is often left out of the conversations about climate change and renewable energy and its benefits to directly benefit from the use of renewable energy. So this Diepsloot area is an area where specifically it's poorly, it's quite off the grid in terms of energy supply. They're constantly having to, they're constantly forced to make illegal connections, and ultimately the government would come in and disconnect these illegal connections that have been made. It's quite an unsafe area because they don't have any municipal lighting to protect people as they go through these communities. But it's ultimately, this was something that was beneficial, as we're noticing. The community members in this area have come to recognize the power of renewable energy. And as of late, I believe 2019, 2020, these communities have grown tired of having to illegally connect themselves to the grid to ultimately have that disconnected, and have resorted to using renewable energy as a form of energy for themselves. And that is an amazing achievement to see that these communities are actually not waiting for the government to provide them with anything. They are going out, recognizing what the resources are that they can use and deploying them on their own. And this is a great testament to our government that the people want renewable energy, and it's about time that they ensure that they disseminate this renewable energy and ensure that people have decentralized access to energy. So 2019, we have really embarked on our climate action campaign, and I'll just be going in a bit about how South Africa, Greenpeace Africa specifically, has engaged with our government on our nationally determined contributions and how we will engage with them in the lead up to COP. So a key point of departure, as I mentioned, for COP will be the nationally determined contributions that have been submitted by the 195 signatories to the Paris Agreement. And Greenpeace Africa was one of the many civil society organizations that made submissions to the Department of Forest, Fisheries and Environment on their NDCs earlier this year to influence that outcome. And ultimately, we asked for them to put forward a more ambitious target. So according to the Climate Action Tracker, Greenpeace South Africa's nationally determined contributions are still considered insufficient, though it has moved from the 2015 commitments being considered highly insufficient to now being considered insufficient. So Greenpeace Africa put together analysis on this NDC and what South Africa's commitments to the NDC, to the Paris Agreement should look like in order for us to be in line with that 1.5 degrees Celsius target. And so right now, the IPCC report was released a few months ago and revealed that we have already in the past 50,000 years, the globe has warmed significantly, and most of that warming has been within the last 2 decades or so. And we are now at the point where we are at about 1.1 degrees Celsius in warming, and already beginning to see some extreme weather events taking place across the world. We've seen already in Northern Africa, areas like Morocco recording 50 degrees Celsius temperatures. Of course, we saw quite extensively covered throughout the year the extreme weather events in Australia, the fires taking place in California, as well as flooding taking place across Europe. But of course, Africa continues to experience these extreme weather events as well, but the most prominent of them being drought across the region, and ultimately affecting our food security going forward. And so for us, it was a matter of highlighting these issues to the government and telling them that for us to maintain a 1.5 degrees Celsius warming, it is essential that they put forward a emissions reduction range, or at least upper boundary of 288 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent, as well as monitoring or evaluating the mitigation measures that they've put forward, particularly being the IRP, which is the strongest of those, and that the IRP, our integrated resource plan, and its renewable energy components ensure that we could really reduce our emissions by 84 metric tons a year, which is an enormous amount compared to all the mitigation measures such as carbon tax and energy efficiency programs that have been put forward. So we really have implored our minister to increase the uptake of renewable energy, as this could truly be a key potential for us reducing our emissions going forward. And as I mentioned, of course, South Africa does have historical responsibility as a result of our carbon majors, our state utility, Eskom, and petrochemical company, Sasol, which is also featured on the Carbon Disclosure Project's top 100 companies that have contributed to 71% of our emissions since the 1980s. And that's a significant amount of emissions that they are responsible for.
Hi, Thandile. We need to start wrapping up. I don't know how many slides you have left. Okay.
I will speed through these. So this is just an overview of the South African and Africa as a whole climate action as of far based on Climate Action Tracker. Just giving an overview just of a few countries, Kenya, South Africa, and Gambia. And of course, Gambia being the only country in the world, I believe, that has put forward ambitious targets that are actually 1.5 degrees Celsius aligned. South Africa, as I mentioned, remains insufficient, as well as Kenya being almost sufficient. So we definitely need to see a lot more of our countries putting forward commitments. I think a lot more, I think 13 or so other African countries have actually put forward commitments this year, and definitely need to see a lot more of them putting forward, because as Africa, we're not completely unresponsible for climate change, though we have maybe had a smaller share of contribution. We do have a historical responsibility, and this is a global issue that we all need to contribute towards. So this is just the video that I wanted to share, and this is the last slide before I just give you an overview of some of Greenpeace Africa's contact details that you can get a hold of us through and be able to communicate with us. So this is just some multimedia footage that we've used to really disseminate the issue about climate change and how you can really get involved and ensure that some action is taken on this.
The weather has guided and shaped human activity throughout our history. From agriculture to fishing, the weather has told us when to move and when to be still. But the weather is changing. The science is clear. We have to cut our carbon emissions drastically in the next decade. If we continue business as usual without taking climate action, extreme weather events caused by a changing climate will irreversibly alter how we live our day-to-day lives. Extreme heat kills. Prolonged heat waves, a consequence of the climate crisis, are beyond what people can cope with. The same goes for plants and animals. In Africa, average temperatures are rising faster than the global rate.
I have seen how much the climate crisis has affected the people in my community, in my country, and in the African continent. With the rise in global temperatures, the African continent faces a risk of changing and disruption of weather patterns, hence bringing about shorter and heavier rainy seasons that cause flooding and longer and hotter dry spells in many parts of the continent.
African countries are expected to become more urban and less climate resilient. The lack of trees in city centers means no shade, increased temperatures, and less capacity to endure floods. Flash floods destroy infrastructure and leave already vulnerable communities more exposed.
In the Sahel, climate change destroys our crops, our homes, but also families who are the victim of forced migrations.
We have already seen locust swarms destroy an entire season's harvest in Eastern Africa. The swarms in Kenya in 2020 are the worst they have been in 70 years. Human-made climate change creates the perfect conditions for more swarms to thrive.
But Africa, it's not only the most impacted continent. It is the continent of millions of citizens determined to stop climate change, to move away from fossil fuels, who will stand up to protect our forests and our biodiversity from industrialized agriculture.
Billionaire classes hoarding the commons and wealth of African countries means fewer resources to go around, which may lead to increases in violence and conflict. We need governments to protect the people they are charged with. We need an immediate just transition towards renewable energy. We need global change inspired by local action.
The climate crisis is affecting many lives. It is destroying livelihoods. Our leaders must do something about this.
Stand with us. Fight for the future. Fight for all our futures. Call on your government to declare a climate emergency.
So I'll try to wrap up as quickly as possible. And that video discusses many of the key issues that we'll be taking forward to COP, which is social justice and equity. So as you may be aware, civil society organizations such as Greenpeace Africa and SA-CAN have called for the COP to be postponed due to a botched vaccination drive, prohibitive costs, as well as just the COVID-19 pandemic limiting people from being able to be at that event. It's really going to be cropping out South Africans and Africans from the conversation. As you see Vanessa Nakate in the video being vocal, the climate activist that was cropped out of that infamous Davos picture. Much the same that will be happening with this COP. It'll be the most exclusionary COP that there has ever been as a result of these issues that I've mentioned. So what will be important to us is ensuring that the voices of the Global South are highlighted at this COP and made known. So as Greenpeace Africa, we are always looking for volunteers to be able to support in creating the strategies for these campaigns. Just yesterday, we had our volunteers in a strategy meeting, and it's always great to have them there, and they offer a new and insightful voice. And if you are interested in joining the climate movement, we'd be happy to have you as a volunteer to be able to pioneer this. We're always looking for new voices to contribute to the discourse around climate change and write on these issues to make sure that the Global South's voices are heard. So if you can please contact us either on our social media pages, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, or you can visit our website. And of course, our contact details are there. Thank you so much for your time.